Welcome back to another episode of Mateina, my Yerba hooligans and mate aficionados. Whether you're sitting at home with your favorite gourd or walking through the city, earbuds in your ear with a thermos under your arm and holding your gourd, or wondering why on earth anybody would willingly drink something through a metal straw that looks like it belongs in a medieval kitchen, then this is the place to be for you. This is Mateina, and I'm your host, Thomas, or you can call me Thomas, whatever you prefer, as long as you stick around with me for the next roughly 30 minutes, because this is the podcast in which we talk about yerba mate, the culture around it, the gear, the rituals, and most importantly, the stuff that's actually in the cup. And today, today we're getting seriously hands-on because we're talking about something that can completely change your mate experience before you've even put the first leaf into your gourd. We're talking about the gourd itself. Well, it wasn't really a mystery, right? We're going to talk about calabash gourds, wooden mate, and some of the other alternatives out there. We'll talk about why traditional gourds need curing, exactly how to cure a calabash properly, how wooden mates are a little bit different, and what you absolutely should not do if you don't want your beautiful new companion to become a tiny botanical swamp. Then we're moving on to the second gear that you need, the bombilla. Straight bombilla, spoon bombilla, spring filters, ball filters. We're talking about all the different kinds of bombillas, the different designs, and most importantly, which type works best with Argentine yerba, Uruguayan yerba, and those incredibly fine cuts that seem determined to escape into your mouth. And after that, of course, the yerba of the week review, my friends. The yerba of the week review is what we're going to talk about afterwards, because that is a Uruguayan one or Brazilian one. It depends how you look at it, right? So get your mate ready, get your water to the right temperature, and let's dig in right now at Somos Mateina. That is your mate store where you can all get your gourds, your bombillas, your yerbas, over 85 different kinds of yerbas. Imagine it's over 85 different kinds of yerbas. Yeah, we're not that small anymore, my friends. We're growing rapidly. I mean, go to your supermarket and see how many different kinds of coffees you find there in those chain supermarkets. And then come to us and look at how many different kinds of yerbas we have. Yep, we are growing, and that is what we want. But let's start. Well, maybe one more thing. Follow us on Instagram at Somos Mateina. You'll see all the gear we have. You get tips, tricks. You see how to cure a mate, for example. Yep, the wooden one, the calabash one. But okay, without any further ado now, your mate is more than a cup, as you know. And that's where we're starting with. Because when people discover yerba mate, they often think the most important decision is which yerba should I buy. Obviously, that really matters. But the vessel you drink out of can have a surprisingly large influence on your experience, because a traditional mate is not just a cup. It's not a coffee cup that always tastes the same because it's ceramic or whatever, or glass or whatever your cup is. A mate is different because it's an organic material, and that material contains flavors, and that's part of the brewing system. The shape also affects it. It depends how the yerba sits. The opening affects how to build your montanita. The material can influence aroma and temperature. And with natural materials, the vessel itself becomes part of the history of your mate. It grows with you as you continue your mate journey. And something I can already tell you before we start, there is no universal winner. Whatever works for you is what you should get. So if I say that I personally drink only out of calabash, that doesn't mean that's the best, because that's my preference. If your preference is wood, if your preference is ceramic, whatever your preference is, that is what you should continue drinking because you love it. You can try a different one. Why not? Yeah, have more mates at home. But if that's your preference, you'll go with that. No universal winner. I needed to say that. And if you want something easy, durable, almost impossible to mess up, stainless steel, for example, as I mentioned, glass. If you want something more traditional, full of character, a calabash is hard to beat. And if you want something with distinctive aroma and beautiful natural appearance, wooden mates are incredibly interesting. Historically, natural vessels made from gourds and wood have been an important part of mate culture across the Rio de la Plata region. Museum collections, for example, document traditional mates made from calabash, wood, horn, metal, silver, and other materials. So let's start with the classic. The calabash mate is made from a dried and hollowed out gourd. The masters of the mates, they create this beautiful gourd, put leather around it, put stitching in it, then they put the silver or the alpaca silver ring on top of it, put it together. Beautiful. Work of art. But every natural calabash is different. You can have two gourds from the same producer and they can look completely different. One might be round and compact, the other one might be tall, a little slimmer. One might have thick walls, another one might have just very thin, beautiful textures that makes it look like it came straight out of an old photograph from Uruguay. You will also hear names such as Torpedo, Imperial, Camionero, Porongo, and Cuya, depending on the style and the region. These are just different forms and shapes, because the shape isn't just purely decorative. For example, Uruguayan style mates are often larger and have wider openings, which makes sense when you're dealing with fine, dense yerba. The shape gives you room to build and maintain the famous montanita, the little mountain that you build before you start drinking. But there is one word that needs to be in your mind when you buy the mate, bring it home: curing. So what does curing actually mean? This is one of those subjects where mate advice can become almost mystical, because there is sort of a rule to how to cure it, but each and every individual does it differently. And that already starts with what is curing. Some people say it seals the pores, prevents mold, protects the gourd, or gives it an alma, a soul. Some of those descriptions are traditional wisdom rather than literal chemistry. But the practical purpose of curing a mate is to condition the interior, remove loose plant material, and reduce unwanted flavors from the raw gourd. And traditional Uruguayan guidance describes curing as a way of removing the remaining vegetal materials from a new natural vessel and conditioning the interior so that the mate develops its own character over time. Because it becomes part of you, and you become part of your gourd. And here's the important part. Curing does not magically make a gourd mold-proof. Mold is primarily a moisture problem. So if you finish your mate and leave the wet yerba inside for 1 or 2 days, no amount of traditional curing can save your gourd. The gourd needs to be emptied, dried properly, and that after every use. So let's talk about how to cure one, right? Now that we know it's very important, let's See, there's a few steps that you need to take. When you get a new calabash, look inside. You're probably going to see loose fibers, bits of dried plant materials, maybe even seeds, or pieces of the inner wall, maybe some darker spots. That's all normal. What you don't want to see is structural damage or soft or rotten areas or a crack that goes all the way through the wall. If the gourd is fundamentally damaged, curing is not going to fix that. So first, and that's sort of an optional thing, remove the loose material, because you can do that, or you will also do that later. But first, gently scrape the inside of the gourd. Take a spoon or another blunt tool and gently scrape it. And the key word is gently. You don't want to break the gourd. You're not excavating an archaeological site. You don't want to aggressively carve away the wall of the gourd so that the spoon looks outside of your gourd. You're simply removing the loose inner materials that does not belong there. Then you use yerba, but you use used yerba. You fill the gourd with used yerba, ideally yerba that you've just brewed and is lavada, is washed out. Traditional curing methods commonly use yerba and water, allowing the interior to absorb the material and gradually become conditioned. So when you have the moist yerba in it, just don't be shy. Fill it up with lukewarm water, maybe 70 to 75 degrees Celsius, 170 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit, just the way you drink your mate. But make sure there's no water sitting anywhere. It should be moist. And then you let the condition do its job. Yeah, you just have to wait. That's for modern humans often the hardest part, not doing anything. And you let it sit for roughly days or 24 hours. Some people might say you do it for 48 hours, but I think, out of experience, I think I have roughly over 20 gourds at home myself, and the majority of them are calabash. 24 hours will do it. And then, once that time has passed, take a spoon and scrape out the old yerba. And then you scrape the walls again, carefully, gently. Then you rinse it out until everything, every residue, everything that was in there is gone. And then you have to dry it completely. Don't drink out of it yet. Dry it first completely. Don't put a lid on it. Put it in the sun. Put it in a space where it gets some good airflow. And do not let it sit with full of water or anything like that. No. It will develop stains. It will develop a smell. And then after the smell comes the famous mold. And if you do that, your gourd is ready to be used. So, what about wooden mates? Do you still do the same thing? Yes, some people will say. I say no. No. Well, the process of getting it, you go to somosmateina.com, get your gourd delivered all over Europe within 5 to 6 business days. You'll get it. You don't drink out of it right away. You have to cure it. And for that, you need butter. Yes, butter. You take the butter, you smear it inside the gourd. You cover the entire inside of the gourd, the bottom, the sides. Wherever mate will touch the wooden walls, this is where you have to have butter on it. Yes, you butter it. Not a thick layer, but you cover it nicely. Nice and smooth. And then you fill it up with used yerba, just the way we did it with the calabash. But here's the difference. You let it sit for roughly 12 hours. There's no need for 24 to 48 hours. You let it sit for 12 hours. The next day you empty out the used yerba. And then there is no scraping. There is no need. Wood is normally a material that you don't have to scrape off. If it's really rough, then scrape it off a little bit. But normally you don't have to. Just empty out the wooden gourd and then rinse it out. And then you take a paper towel or whatever you have, and you really make sure that you dry the gourd well. You have to get the butter out. So just rub it on the wall a little bit. Just make sure you get the butter out. And then you let it sit put it in the sun a little bit, wherever there is space that gives you a nice airflow. Put it there, and wood dries really fast. So it's probably dry after half an hour to an hour, and then you can use it. And that is really the big difference between wood and calabash. And yes, of course, there are other mates, and mate is really the word that in Spanish is used for the gourd itself. So there's different mates. There is stainless steel mates, there is glass mates. So whatever you prefer, just get it. They also come in different shapes and forms. Obviously, you don't have to cure a glass mate or a stainless steel one, but I'm sure you know that. And that covers the mates. The bombilla is part 2, but gotta take a sip of the good yerba that we have here. And if you know me, you probably know that I'm a huge fan of Uruguayan yerbas. Which is also what I'm drinking today, which is also the yerba of the week. It's a big company located in Brazil, owns another famous company located in Uruguay. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, because that's the last part for our show. Because now we're at the Bombilla. And that brings me to Somos Mateina on Instagram. Follow us, because you can see all our bombillas that we have there. You can see how to clean them, because that's very important, because the bombilla normally is the unsung hero, and if it clogs, it's not the bombilla's fault, it's your fault. Because that is the thing that makes the mate possible, the bombilla. Yep, the thing that sits quietly in your gourd while everyone argues about whether it should be spoon-shaped, spring-loaded, silver, stainless steel, or some mysterious design that looks like laboratory equipment. And that is what's called the bombilla. So basically, it's a metal straw with a filtering system. That doesn't sound cool anymore, huh? So please stay with me. It's gonna be cool in a second again, because the bombilla is very simple and it's very easy to explain. It lets the liquid through while keeping the yerba out of your mouth. So it's a filter system. But choices matter, because not every bombilla, especially in the beginning phases of your mate journey, likes every kind of yerba, or likes all kinds of yerbas. The classic bombilla has a perforated filter on the bottom that looks sort of like a spoon that has holes in it. You can find them in different materials: steel, stainless steel, aluminum, alpaca, or real silver, or even other materials. A standard perforated bombilla works beautifully with many Argentine style yerbas. Why? Because Argentine yerba is often relatively large compared to Uruguayan ones or Chimarrão, because you also have a larger cut, stems, con palo. It's easier for the bombilla. So the regular bombilla will do it. And I'm telling you this because in the beginning you might have difficulties, and that's normal. That's absolutely normal. Building your montanita, putting the bombilla in, but do it 3-4 times and you'll be the king. And then I'm telling you, you can do it with any bombilla. You can drink any yerba with any bombilla. I have different bombillas at home. I were probably 15 or 16. I don't really know. And I mainly use 2 or 3. And they are all the regular ones with the little duck mouth on top. So it kind of bends over and has the regular filter system on the bottom, the perforated oval shaped one, I guess. So, but let's go back to the different ones. The spoon bombilla, the one I just described, the one that I enjoy using for all kinds of yerbas. What does it look like? It looks like the end has been flattened into a little spoon. Instead of relaying purely on small holes, the design created a broader filtering surface. These can be very comfortable for everyday drinking and can work well with a variety of Argentine and mixed cuts. They are also easy to clean, and honestly, sometimes they're just really underrated, because a bombilla that filters beautifully but is impossible to clean is not your friend. Then you have the spring or the coiled bombilla. Now we arrive at the bombilla I would immediately reach for. I personally not, but as a beginner I would immediately reach for if someone handed me a very fine Uruguayan yerba, and that's the spring bombilla. Instead of a simple perforated chamber, it uses a fine spring or coil filter. And this is where the difference between Argentine and Uruguayan yerba becomes obvious, because Uruguayan style yerba is commonly sin palo. Without stems, it's finely milled. The fine material can be much more difficult to filter. What if you use the wrong bombilla? Nothing. What if you use the wrong bombilla and you don't know anything about yerba? Congratulations! You've created a green smoothie. Yeah. No, you probably have not. Because you will learn it and then you use the bombilla that you want. So you have not just created a green smoothie, but the finer the yerba, that's the rule of thumb, the more important the filtration system becomes. There is ways of using your regular spoon bombilla. For example, when you drink Uruguayan yerba, you build your montanita and then you just pour the cold water in. Let it sit for 5-6 minutes until the yerba has absorbed the water, and then you put in the bombilla. Put your thumb on top so no leftover water can flow in to the filtering system, and then you push it in and you won't have any issues. But overall, a spring style bombilla is perfectly shaped and created for powdery heavy Uruguayan yerbas. Then you have the ball or bombilla bombillas. Those are like the bulb shaped or ball filter bombillas. These use a larger filtered chamber at the bottom. They're another option for finer yerbas because the larger filtering surface can help reduce clogging, and some drinkers swear by them. Others prefer springs. Others, like me, just like the spoon bombilla, and that's it. But again, as a rule of thumb, the finer the yerba, the more filtration you want. So let's break it down. And again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you a little overview of what you could do, because I also don't follow these rules. But I am not the yerba god. Sometimes I would like to be the yerba god. But those were sort of like the Guarani people, right? They were kind of like the ones that started discovering this beautiful drink and harvesting it and planting it and all that stuff. So, but okay, right, drifting off again. Bombilla, which one should you use? I'm going to make it extremely simple. Argentine yerba, especially con palo, standard, perforated, or spoon style bombilla. Uruguayan, fine cut, or sin palo yerba, spring or coiled, or another fine filtration bombilla. Extremely powdery yerba, choose a bombilla with a large, effective filtering surface. And one more thing, don't constantly move the bombilla around. This is one of the easiest way to destroy your carefully constructed mate. You build your mountain, your montanita, you create your wet air, you place the bombilla, and then leave it alone. The bombilla is not a spoon, it's not a shovel, it's not a gardening tool. Once it's positioned properly, let it work. With Uruguayan yerbas, however, and there's always exceptions to the rule, right? With Uruguayan yerbas, you can move it around a little bit. And to be honest, I personally sometimes feel like it's getting clogged a little bit. I put my thumb on top. I would not admit this in public. Well, sort of in public, but I would not admit this. But I put my thumb on it and I take it out and put it back in and push it underneath. And then it's unclogged again. And you get the beautiful, good yerba again. Or you sip out of it, or while you sip out of it, you just move it around a little bit, and then you hear that kind of noise, right? That is something that you can do, but normally you should not touch the bombilla, especially if it's not your gourd, because people will dislike you for that. And the last thing is the temperature reminder. Because we talked about yerba, we talked about bombillas, we talked about mates. Don't boil your mate. Don't make a soup. Don't make matcha out of it. The water is too hot. It produces a harsh, bitter, and unpleasant infusion. You're burning the leaves. The leaves don't give you any flavor. It's not good anymore. So the perfect temperature is 70 to 75 degrees Celsius or 170 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. That's it. That's all you need to know. Those are the two most important things that you need. Well, there's one more, right? Yerba! And we have come to the Yerba of the Week review. And today's Yerba of the Week is the one that I'm sipping on. It's Baldo. So who is Baldo? What is Baldo? Baldo, fascinating name in the world of mate because it sits in the intersection of Brazilian production and the Uruguayan style of mate. Because the company traces its history back to 1920. And today, Baldo S.A. is a Brazilian yerba mate producer headquartered in Encantado, Rio Grande do Sul, with additional production facilities in southern Brazil. The company also controls the Uruguayan company Canarias. And some other ones too that I'm going to tell you a little bit later. And that connection matters because when you look at Baldo's flagship yerba, the company itself describes it as a meeting point between the freshness of Brazilian green yerba and the intensity associated with rested Uruguayan style mate. And that's a pretty interesting identity. It's not simply trying to be Brazilian yerba, it's deliberately occupying that borderland. And that borderland is reflected in the cup. And Baldo says its process begins by separating the leaf from the stems, followed by a fine grinding process resulting in a product made from leaf rather than the traditional leaf and stem mixture. So if you're expecting a big leafy Argentine style cut with lots and lots of visible stems and large cut leaves, that's not what you're getting, my friends. You're entering the fine cut territory here. And that's where you might need the bombilla that is called the spring bombilla. So look and feel. What do you expect, or what can you expect when you open the package? The look you'll notice is the color. Baldo has that attractive golden green appearance associated with rested Uruguayan influenced yerba. It's not simply bright, fresh green. There is a deeper, more mature visual character. And when you look closely, the cut is fine. It's very fine. This is not the yerba where you casually dump a pile into a mate and forget about technique. You need to respect the structure. You shake it properly, you build the montañita, you give the yerba some time to expand, and use the bombilla that can handle the fine material. Because the official product description calls Baldo full-bodied, intense, and golden, and emphasizes its fine grinding and leaf-focused compositions. The aroma, let's smell it. Because Baldo smells interestingly. You get the unmistakable green character of yerba mate, but there is a deeper and more mature note. It's not going to smell like freshly green cut grass. There's more body to it, more dryness. There is like rested mate aroma. If you're accustomed to softer Argentine yerbas, Baldo can immediately announce itself as something more intense. You can smell that it's from Uruguay or from Brazil. You can smell that it's different. And then it also looks different because you hardly see the leaves. It's so finely grinded. It has notes of almost walnut, dark chocolate maybe. It's just beautiful. Preparing Baldo, well, it's the same as you prepare your regular yerba mate. You shake it, build your montanita, put the cold water in, put a little bit of the hot water in, and then you let it sit until the leaves have absorbed the water and the water is all gone. And then you put in the bombilla. You put your thumb on top of the bombilla. You push it underneath the montanita, and then you fill it up with water and drink it and enjoy it. Now that we know what it looks, what it smells like, what it tastes like, let's talk about Baldo, the company, a little bit more, because Baldo is a huge player in the game. And as I mentioned earlier, Baldo is not just Baldo. Baldo owns Canarias. That's the one in Uruguay. Esmeralda, Checkmate, or Checkmate. Those are companies that are owned by Baldo. And Canarias is particularly relevant because of Baldo's connection to Uruguay. Because the current Canarias range includes the classic Canarias, Canarias Serena, Canarias Edición Especial, and believe even flavored versions such as green tea with ginger and red tea with centella. The classic Canarias is positioned as a golden, intense yerba with a very high proportion of pure leaf and natural resting process. Yeah. So what are my final thoughts? Let's bring everything together. Today we've learned that mate itself matters. The calabash gives you tradition, individuality, and a vessel that changes with use and grows with you as you continue your mate journey. The wooden mate gives you another natural material with its own aroma and personality, just not as intense of a flavor as you will get in a calabash. Both demand responsibility. You cure them, you clean them, you dry them. Very, very important. And then you have the bombillas, typical Argentine cuts. A conventional perforated or spoon-like bombilla is usually the one that you should go with. Then you have the ones for the more fine and powdery, stemless Uruguayan yerbas. Like filtration becomes more important. That's when the spring bombilla, for example, pops right in front of you. And then we learn about Baldo, 1920 Brazilian base. Beautiful, beautiful yerba that combines Uruguay and Brazil in one pack. But maybe the biggest lesson from today's episode: there isn't one correct way to drink mate. There are traditions, there are regional preferences, there are different cuts, different gourds, different bombillas, different temperatures. And then there is you, your palate, your ritual, your favorite mate, your favorite yerba. And that is what makes mate so fascinating. Because once you understand the basic, you can start experimenting. And never do this yourself, because mate is something that should be shared. It should bring people together, not apart. It tells stories. It shares moments. And that is what is most important. More important than the yerba you drink, the bombilla you use, or the mate that you acquire. And with those words, I would like to say thank you. We have come to the end of today's episode. Don't you worry, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. And don't forget, subscribe. You can hear this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Go to somosmateina.com, get your gourd, get your bombilla. We have all different kinds of bombillas, different kinds of yerbas, from glass to calabash and everything in between. Over 85 different kinds of yerbas. somosmateina.com. We ship worldwide with focus on Europe, obviously, because we are in the heart of Europe. Free shipping over 59 euros. So get your yerbas, try some new ones. And follow us on Instagram, Somos Mateina, to get your tips and tricks and see what's new in our store. And with that, I am going to peace out for this week. I am Tomas, your host, or you can call me Thomas. And don't forget, el café es para mortales, el mate para leyendas.